Millions of movie fans once believed Jean-Claude Van Damme could never be stopped. He wasn't just another action hero. He was the man who could launch a perfect spinning kick, leap into impossible splits, and make audiences believe that discipline alone could overcome any obstacle. Throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s, his name was everywhere. His movies filled theaters around the world. His posters covered bedroom walls. His fighting style inspired an entire generation to step into martial arts schools. Then something changed. The man once known as the Muscles from Brussels slowly faded from the center of Hollywood. New faces took over. Blockbusters came and went without him. Fans began asking the same question year after year. What happened to Jean-Claude Van Damme? Was it simply changing trends? Was it bad luck? Or was there a much deeper story hidden behind the fame? Today, we're uncovering the real story behind Jean-Claude Van Damme's disappearance, through the struggles he has openly discussed over the years. It's a story about ambition, impossible expectations, painful mistakes, and the long road back to finding yourself after the spotlight fades. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why one of Hollywood's biggest action legends says his toughest battles never happened in front of a camera. Long before Hollywood knew his name, Jean-Claude Van Damme was simply a quiet boy growing up in Brussels, Belgium. Born Jean-Claude Camille François van Varenberg on October 18, 1960, he wasn't the intimidating athlete many people imagine. As a child, he was often described as small, shy, and physically fragile. His father noticed that his son lacked confidence and worried that he might struggle to defend himself. Instead of accepting that reality, his father made a decision that would change his son's entire life. He enrolled young Jean-Claude in martial arts. At first, it wasn't about becoming famous. It wasn't about movies or championships. It was simply about building confidence. What began as a way to overcome insecurity quickly became an obsession. While many children played games after school, Jean-Claude spent countless hours training. Every kick had to be sharper. Every punch had to be faster. Every movement had to be repeated until it became second nature. He wasn't satisfied with being good. He wanted perfection. His commitment soon became obvious. Years of disciplined training transformed the quiet Belgian boy into an extraordinary martial artist. He earned a black belt in karate while still young and competed successfully in tournaments. He also trained in kickboxing and other combat disciplines, constantly searching for ways to improve. The physical ability people admired on screen decades later wasn't created by Hollywood. It was built through years of repetition, sacrifice, and relentless discipline. But martial arts alone weren't enough to satisfy his growing dreams. As he watched American action films, another goal began taking shape. He didn't just want to be a fighter. He wanted to become a movie star. For someone growing up in Belgium during the 1970s, that dream sounded almost impossible. Hollywood wasn't simply another city. It was another world. Thousands of talented actors struggled for years without ever getting a single speaking role. Jean-Claude knew the odds weren't in his favor. Still, he refused to let statistics define his future. He admired stars like Bruce Lee and Arnold Schwarzenegger, believing action films could combine athleticism with storytelling in a way few other genres could. If they could do it, why couldn't he? That question pushed him toward one of the boldest decisions of his life. He left Belgium behind and traveled to the United States with little more than determination and a dream that many considered unrealistic. Life in America wasn't glamorous. Far from it. Instead of walking onto movie sets, Jean-Claude found himself struggling simply to survive. He worked ordinary jobs to pay the bills. Money was tight. Success remained distant. Every day became another test of patience. Hollywood wasn't waiting for him. He had to fight for every opportunity. Countless auditions ended in disappointment. Many casting directors saw his accent as a problem. Others questioned whether audiences would accept a European martial artist as a leading man. Doors closed repeatedly, but quitting never became an option. Jean-Claude believed every rejection was temporary. He continued training. He continued networking. He continued believing that one breakthrough could change everything. Eventually, that breakthrough arrived. In 1988, a relatively small martial arts film called Bloodsport reached audiences. Few people expected it to become a defining moment for action cinema. The film told the story of Frank Dux, an American martial artist competing in an underground tournament known as the Kumite. While aspects of the story later became controversial due to questions surrounding Dux's claims, audiences focused on something else entirely: Jean-Claude Van Damme. His athletic ability looked unlike anything viewers had seen before. The kicks were explosive. The flexibility seemed almost unreal. The action sequences felt faster, cleaner, and more authentic than many traditional Hollywood fight scenes. Almost overnight, audiences had discovered a new action star. Bloodsport became a major commercial success despite its modest budget, launching Jean-Claude into international recognition. Hollywood suddenly saw what audiences already believed. This wasn't just another martial artist. This was someone who could carry an entire movie. Success came quickly after that. Just 1 year later came Kickboxer. Once again, Jean-Claude played a determined fighter overcoming overwhelming odds. The movie delivered exactly what fans wanted: intense training, spectacular fight choreography, an underdog story filled with determination and resilience. The film strengthened his growing reputation as one of the most exciting action stars in the business. Soon, the hits kept coming: Lionheart, Double Impact, Universal Soldier, Hard Target, Timecop. One after another, these films expanded his worldwide popularity. His unique combination of martial arts skill, athletic physique, and charismatic screen presence helped separate him from nearly everyone else in Hollywood. Unlike many action stars who relied heavily on stunt doubles, Jean-Claude performed an impressive amount of his own physical work. Audiences could see the difference. The kicks looked genuine because they were. The flexibility was real. The famous split wasn't a camera trick. It was years of discipline brought to life on screen. Around the world, martial arts schools welcomed new students inspired by his films. Young athletes practiced spinning kicks in their backyards, hoping to imitate their hero. His movies became international favorites, especially in Europe, Asia, and Latin America, where his popularity reached extraordinary levels. By the early 1990s, Jean-Claude Van Damme had become one of Hollywood's highest-paid action stars. Studios trusted his name. Fans lined up for his newest releases. His future appeared limitless. From the outside, it seemed he had achieved everything he had dreamed about as that shy boy from Brussels. The fame, the money, the recognition, the respect. He had fought his way from complete obscurity to global superstardom. Few people imagined that such remarkable success could disappear. Because when someone reaches the very top, we naturally assume they'll stay there. But Hollywood rarely works that way. Behind every blockbuster lies enormous pressure. Behind every success comes even greater expectations. As the years passed, the entertainment industry itself began changing. New action stars emerged. Computer-generated effects became more common. Audience tastes slowly shifted. At first, the changes were almost impossible to notice. Then they became harder to ignore. Some movies no longer performed the way earlier films had. Critics grew harsher. Studios became more cautious. The momentum that once seemed unstoppable began showing its first cracks. To fans watching from the outside, it looked confusing. How could someone who had dominated action cinema for years suddenly seem less visible? Why were his films no longer receiving the same attention? And what was happening behind the scenes that audiences couldn't see? The answers wouldn't become clear until years later, when Jean-Claude Van Damme himself began speaking openly about the pressures, struggles, and painful realities that existed behind the image of the invincible action hero. Because while millions believed they knew the man on the screen, very few understood what was happening once the cameras stopped rolling. At first, the changes were so gradual that many fans barely noticed them. Jean-Claude Van Damme was still making movies. His name still carried weight around the world. His older films continued to attract new audiences. But the unstoppable momentum that had defined the late 1980s and early 1990s was beginning to fade. For an actor who had spent years climbing to the very top, the shift was difficult to accept. Hollywood itself was changing. The era of the solo martial arts superstar was slowly giving way to a different kind of blockbuster. Studios invested more heavily in massive special effects, ensemble casts, and superhero-style storytelling. The action genre that had made Van Damme famous was evolving, and many of the stars who had ruled it found themselves competing in a very different industry. It wasn't just Jean-Claude. Many action legends from that generation experienced similar struggles as audience tastes changed. But for Van Damme, the professional challenges were only one part of a much larger story. Behind the scenes, he was carrying pressures that few people fully understood. Success had transformed his life beyond recognition. The shy boy from Brussels had become one of the most recognizable action stars on the planet. Fame brought wealth, admiration, and opportunity, but it also brought constant expectations. Every new film was expected to outperform the last. Every appearance was analyzed. Every headline became another reminder that people expected him to remain larger than life. Living under that kind of pressure year after year can take a tremendous emotional toll. For a long time, fans saw only the confident fighter on screen. They didn't see the man trying to keep up with an image that never seemed allowed to age or struggle. As his career became more demanding, Van Damme has openly acknowledged that he developed a serious addiction to cocaine during the height of his fame. It wasn't something he hid forever. Years later, he spoke publicly about that chapter of his life, describing how success and constant pressure contributed to destructive choices. By his own account, his addiction grew rapidly. He once estimated that he was spending extraordinary amounts of money on cocaine every week during the worst period of his dependency. What had started as something that seemed manageable gradually took control. The very discipline that had carried him from Belgium to Hollywood was being replaced by habits that threatened everything he had built. Looking back, he has described that period with remarkable honesty. The success was still there on the outside. Inside, however, life was becoming increasingly difficult. The addiction affected both his personal life and his professional reputation. Studios depend on reliability. Productions operate on tight schedules and enormous budgets. When an actor begins struggling behind the scenes, word spreads quickly throughout the industry. Opportunities that once seemed automatic suddenly become uncertain. Around the same time, some of his films were no longer achieving the box office success that studios expected. One disappointing release can be dismissed as bad luck. Several in a row begin changing perceptions. Hollywood has always been driven by results. When ticket sales decline, studios often look elsewhere for their next leading star. The shift happened gradually rather than overnight. Instead of starring in major theatrical releases every year, Van Damme increasingly found himself appearing in smaller productions, including films released directly to home video in many markets. For fans who had grown up watching him dominate cinema screens, it felt like he had quietly disappeared. But disappearing wasn't what had happened. He was still working. He was still acting. The spotlight itself had simply moved. During those difficult years, another important part of Jean-Claude Van Damme's story also became public. He has spoken openly about being diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Rather than keeping it hidden, he discussed the diagnosis in interviews, explaining that understanding his condition helped him better make sense of periods in his life that had once seemed confusing. Mental health was rarely discussed openly by major action stars during the height of his career. For years, many public figures avoided the subject entirely. Van Damme chose a different path. By acknowledging his diagnosis publicly, he became one of the relatively few action icons willing to discuss the reality that physical strength does not protect someone from emotional or psychological challenges. His honesty surprised many fans. The man famous for impossible kicks and fearless screen performances was admitting that some of his greatest battles couldn't be solved with physical strength. That revelation changed how many people viewed him. Instead of seeing only an action hero, they began seeing the person behind the celebrity. At the same time, his personal life often attracted media attention. His relationships, marriages, and family life were frequently covered by tabloids eager to report every development. Living under constant public scrutiny made it difficult to separate private struggles from public perception. Like many celebrities, he found that personal challenges often became entertainment for others. Every setback generated headlines. Every rumor spread rapidly. Not every story written about him was accurate. Speculation often traveled faster than facts. Over the years, numerous rumors circulated about why his career had slowed. Some claimed Hollywood had completely abandoned him. Others suggested he had intentionally walked away from acting. The reality was far more complicated. He continued accepting roles, particularly in international productions and independent action films, while also working to rebuild both his personal life and professional reputation. One of the biggest misconceptions was that Jean-Claude Van Damme had simply vanished. In truth, Many of his films continued finding audiences outside the traditional Hollywood spotlight. International fans remained remarkably loyal. His popularity across Europe, Asia, Eastern Europe, and Latin America never completely disappeared. Even when American media paid less attention, audiences around the world continued celebrating the actor who had inspired them decades earlier. Gradually, something else began changing. Instead of denying his past mistakes, Van Damme started talking about them more openly. He acknowledged the addiction. He discussed recovery. He reflected on decisions he wished he had made differently. Rather than protecting an image of perfection, he chose honesty. That honesty resonated with many people. Fans who had admired his physical strength now respected his willingness to admit weakness. Recovery, however, is never a straight path. It takes time. It demands accountability. And perhaps most importantly, it requires accepting that life may never look exactly the way it once did. For someone who had spent years at the very peak of Hollywood, accepting a different reality wasn't easy. There was no single moment when everything suddenly became better. Instead, there were small victories, better choices, new opportunities, fresh perspectives. He slowly returned to projects that genuinely interested him rather than chasing the impossible expectation of recreating the early 1990s forever. Then came one of the most surprising moments of his later career. In 2008, he starred in JCVD, a film unlike anything audiences had expected. Rather than portraying an invincible fighter, Van Damme played a fictionalized version of himself. A fading action star struggling with career disappointments, legal problems, family issues, and overwhelming public expectations. The performance stunned critics. Many called it the finest acting of his career. For the first time in years, audiences weren't watching Jean-Claude Van Damme simply throw punches or perform spectacular kicks. They were watching him confront vulnerability. The role blurred the line between fiction and reality, allowing viewers to see echoes of the emotional burdens he had carried for years. It reminded the world that behind every famous face is a human being with fears, regrets, and unanswered questions. Yet even JCVD wasn't the final chapter of his story. Because after years of speculation, career ups and downs, addiction, recovery, and personal reflection, Jean-Claude Van Damme eventually began explaining something even deeper. It wasn't just that Hollywood had changed. It wasn't only that his films earned less money. And it wasn't simply the addiction or the headlines. According to Van Damme himself, the greatest battle was far more personal than anyone watching from the outside could fully understand. It was a battle with the weight of fame itself, and the realization that becoming the man the world wanted him to be had slowly pulled him away from the person he really was. That realization would become the emotional truth behind the years so many fans called his disappearance. 4 years, people searched for one dramatic explanation, one shocking confession, one hidden scandal. Something that could explain why Jean-Claude Van Damme was no longer the unstoppable action star who once dominated Hollywood. But when Van Damme finally began speaking openly about those years, the truth turned out to be far more human than sensational. There wasn't one single reason behind his disappearance. It was the result of many struggles happening at the same time. The pressure of worldwide fame, the constant expectation to stay at the top, his battle with cocaine addiction, his bipolar disorder diagnosis, which he has publicly discussed, and the emotional weight of trying to live up to an image that seemed impossible to maintain forever. Rather than blaming Hollywood or making excuses, Van Damme has repeatedly taken responsibility for his own choices. He has admitted that addiction affected both his career and his personal life, and he has spoken honestly about how difficult it was to recognize those problems while living through them. At the height of his success, life moved so fast that he lost sight of what truly mattered. Perhaps that is the real dark truth behind his disappearance. It wasn't that Hollywood suddenly forgot him. It wasn't that audiences stopped caring. It was that the man behind the famous image was fighting battles no one could see. The strongest muscles couldn't defeat addiction. The fastest kick couldn't overcome emotional pain. And fame couldn't protect him from losing himself. As the years passed, Van Damme slowly rebuilt his life. He focused on recovery, accepted new opportunities, and embraced a different stage of his career. His performance in JCVD showed audiences a side of him they had never seen before. Honest, vulnerable, and deeply human. Later, films like The Expendables 2 reminded fans that he still had the charisma and screen presence that made him a global icon. Today, Jean-Claude Van Damme is remembered for much more than his legendary fight scenes. He remains one of the most influential martial arts stars in movie history, inspiring countless actors, fighters, and fans around the world. More importantly, his willingness to speak openly about his struggles has earned him a different kind of respect, one built not on perfection, but on honesty. His greatest comeback wasn't simply returning to the screen. It was finding himself again. His journey reminds us that success doesn't guarantee happiness. Fame can sometimes hide suffering, and even the strongest people can lose their way. But as Jean-Claude Van Damme's story proves, true strength isn't about never falling. It's about having the courage to stand back up. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more powerful stories about the lives behind the legends. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.